On this episode of Newt's World, we're less than a week away from Election Day, and the pollsters, pundits, and people who make their living from election cycles are buzzing about the latest polling and the possible outcome of the election. I want to have someone on the show who can talk with us about all of it, who's seen it from every angle. As his new Substack says, quote, he's been everywhere, he knows everyone, and he's got the inside scoop. So, a good friend of mine, we go back many years, and he is just remarkably knowledgeable, Sean Spicer. He is the former White House press secretary, host of the Sean Spicer Show podcast, co-host of Two Ways the Morning Meeting, which, by the way, I watch regularly because it's so smart, author of The Briefing, Politics, the Press, and the President, and his latest book, Radical Nation, just released and available on Amazon and in bookstores everywhere. You know, you've been busy.
Well, I got to keep up with you.
I do watch you probably 3 mornings a week. I mean, do you enjoy doing that? It's a brilliant show.
Yes. I mean, I love politics. I joke, I'm 5'6", I can't dunk a ball. I have no musical or artistic talent. I love politics. I got involved. My first real race, I think you might remember, 1994, Connecticut 2. You and Joe Gaylord flew up. I was bitten, and I've been a junkie since. I have more Newt paraphernalia and Contract with America stuff than is probably healthy for any individual. But I love it. So for me to be able to have a conversation, I do my show every night at 6. That's very clear where I come from, right? You can go to my YouTube channel, you can watch it. But I love the morning meeting because Halpern is probably, in my opinion, the best sourced journalist out there. He's what you expect from a journalist, but he actually does it better than anybody else because he has conversations with sources to understand their thing. And then Dan Turrentine, who is a former Hillary Pelosi, Jared Polis staffer. Again, he's a Democrat that's been around the block. When you watch football, the color commentary guy, Troy Aikman, Tom Brady, whatever, is always great because they're explaining, in the huddle, this will happen. And da-da-da-da-da. And I'm always like, why would the quarterback do that? And they give you the mindset of what it's like, for a quarterback or whatever position, right? And you go, oh, that's why they threw the ball or they whatever. I love the morning meeting because Halpern's a bona fide hardcore journalist. I've done countless campaigns, 2 presidential cycles, 6 years at the RNC. I was a staffer during your 100-day Contract with America implementation phase. So I've seen it. I've been around. I literally on my podcast today was talking about Andy Harris and I was telling him about the bucket, the visualization of waste of taxpayer money that used to carry around on the campaign trail and why that was so powerful. And so for me, when I get on the morning meeting, the idea of being able to use all that stuff, I feel like a color analyst on a Sunday football game, explaining to people why a campaign is making a decision, why the media is reacting the way it is, because I've been in the game for 30 years. And so for me, it's fun to share that and to hear questions and to explain with a group of people who really want to know. We've got thousands of people on every morning who are like, why did the campaign do that? How are they going to recover from this? What is the thought process behind going to this particular state? So very long-winded way of saying I love doing it.
Right now we're talking, both candidates have given sort of their ultimate last week address. Trump at Madison Square Garden, where, as you know, Clist and I went.
I don't mean to interrupt you on your show, but you've politically seen it all. You were the architect of the 94 Republican Revolution. How did that rank for you and Callista?
It was spectacular. I was talking with Trump a couple of weeks back, and I said, this is genius for you to go back home to be in Madison Square Garden to get the kind of coverage you'll get nationally. And he said, it's going to be really exciting. You and Callista have to be there. Well, it was kind of like a command performance. We had no idea because we had not been to one of the rallies, frankly. The last rally I really was at was when he was pretending I could be a vice presidential nominee, and he invited me to come to Cincinnati in front of about 25,000 people. And he introduced me. He said, and now here's Speaker Newt Gingrich. And the crowd began chanting Newt. And I looked at him, and I looked at the crowd, and I thought, well, that ended that. They're not supposed to chant Newt. But he's a very good friend. So when we got there, we were on the front row, next to Speaker Johnson and next to all of the major players, Elon Musk. I turned at one point to Elise Stefanik. I think it was right after we had Hulk Hogan and Dr. Phil, which is the best back-to-back thing I've ever seen in my life. And I turned around and I said, this is not the Republican Party you originally joined. To me, that was the story that nobody in the press, because they were so eager to try to attack Trump, nobody in the press took a step back and said, if you get Robert F. Kennedy, and he just trashed the Democratic Party, and then you get Tulsi Gabbard, and you get all of these other people, maybe this is kind of a historic turning point in the nature of the coalition that could govern America.
But that's why I asked the question. I've never seen a lineup like that. Even at a convention, I was writing it down Sunday night, and I'm like, you had the politicians, and then you had Hulk Hogan, Dr. Phil, RFK, Tulsi, and then Melania comes out. And again, I was like, you don't see this at a convention.
Right. And of course, she was beautiful. But also I thought, as she gave her talk in what is clearly not her first language, I thought, what better proof do you have that we favor legal immigrants? We're against illegal immigrants, but we're very much for legal immigrants. And of course, she's gorgeous. Her book now is #1. Even the New York Times has had to admit. So I can't imagine what the sales are to force them to admit it. And I think that's frankly a big asset to the campaign. And I think the next day she was on Fox and Friends. She's beautiful. She's smart. And now she has a good, legitimate reason to be doing television and talk about her book. And I think all that helps Trump. We had a comedian who was pretty stupid, but as Jon Stewart said, they're called comedians. He said the idea that this is suddenly being taken seriously, and of course, luckily for all of us, President Biden came along and described us as garbage.
Can I make a comment on this? We spend, 72 hours. I think everybody that's registered as a Republican had to denounce and account for a comedian that had a bad joke 4 hours before Trump. And then Tim Walz had himself booked on ABC this morning after the Biden comment. And this is what Stephanopoulos said, because everyone asked, what do you think of Walz's answer? I said, forget the answer. Look at the question. Republicans have seized on a comment that Biden made. We didn't seize on anything. He insulted 75 million Americans. And then he went on and he said, Biden, did he step on her message, Governor? Wait a second. We didn't get asked, did the comedian step on Trump's message? It was, do you denounce him? Was he wrong? Was he bad? Should they apologize? Should he genuflect in the direction of Puerto Rico for 7 days in a row? And yet here we are with them just brushing us. Did he step on her message? Where was the accountability there?
Well, first of all, I don't take anybody in the propaganda media seriously. Look, Stephanopoulos is a professional Democrat, period. He was Clinton's spokesperson. Before that, he worked in the House for the Democratic leader. So I just don't pay any attention to him. Most of the reporters in the big elite places are hardline left-wingers. They couldn't possibly have given an honest account of Trump's speech or of the scale of the Trump success that's going on. But my view as a practitioner, a one-time practitioner anyway, is if you can go to McDonald's, which 87% of the country goes to, and then you can go to the Steelers and have people chanting USA, USA, and then you can do the most popular podcasts in the world, and you actually break all of his records. I think they're above 80 million now downloads. And then you go and you get every single cable news channel to carry you live when you give your big speech. And then, by the way, there was a comedian. The total mismatch is so silly. When Bezos told the Post they could not endorse, they supposedly, as of this morning, have lost 250,000 subscribers because those people want blood, and they want a news media that gives them blood. They don't care about the truth. They care about hating Trump, and they want to be allowed to stand around the tree and chant, "We hate Trump, we hate Trump." I'm supposed to be interviewing you. You're not supposed to be interviewing me. Let me switch back to being the host. I thought it was weird, if you're trying to be the candidate of change, to set up an event in front of the White House.
You think, honestly, I think that Joe Biden was walking back and forth down the hallway like, Jill, what's going on the mall tonight? Where is everybody? And they were like, oh, don't worry, Joe, just have dinner. Like, how embarrassing that they have that event. The guy's right behind them and they don't invite him.
I think he said the garbage line knowing it would break through and knowing it would smother her speech. Look, this guy's a professional. He's been in office since 1972. Almost everything he's done since she got the nomination has been undermining her. He has not done her any favors. But I also think your point's exactly right. How do you hold a speech where you're the vice president and you're in front of the place where the president lives, Somebody commented on him being up on the balcony watching.
In all seriousness, with the lights and power that it took to get that on, there's no way that he wasn't looking out and saying, what's going on out there? I hate always feeling like I want to bash the media, but I also want people to have perspective. When we didn't have some of the Republican elders attend the convention, the media went nuts. George W. Bush and Mitt Romney will not attend the Republican National Convention this year. And to your point, there's an event that you can throw a baseball at from the White House that Joe Biden's not at, and he's sitting there and no one brings it up. I mean, honestly, they could have said, Joe, we forgot to invite you. Come on down. And he would have been there in 8 seconds. But how did that go undiscussed?
Look, the number one goal of the propaganda media for the next days is to defeat Trump.
Well, you think about it, they've gone all in 2 cycles in a row. And now it's like, what do we do? They are about to have the conniption of a lifetime because their worst dream, the 2016 one, I don't think they really thought was going to come true. This time, I think they're like, it's going to happen again. And 4 years, we're going to be stuck getting treated the way that we did.
Well, except this time, he will be tougher. He's more knowledgeable. He will not be nearly as forgiving. I think part of the time he was wavering between, can I placate them or do I have to fight them? I don't think he'll have much doubt at this stage. I've seen it twice in my career. If you go back and look on YouTube, the night we won in 94, the look on the faces of the newscasters as it began to sink in. I remember one reporter told Bill Paxton 3 or 4 days later, you defeated Governor Cuomo, who's the man I most admire, but I'll eventually forgive you. This is a reporter. It was unthinkable.
That was my first campaign. I was there. When you were walking around telling people I'm running for Speaker of the House, people were like, sure, absolutely. I don't think that they thought it could happen. I don't think that's a bridge too far. And I don't think they thought Trump could win in 2016.
You can go to YouTube and pull up election night 2016, and you get the same looks. The same, oh my God, he's carrying Pennsylvania. Oh God, he's now carrying Michigan. Oh, what does this mean? It's just funny to watch. As the evening went on, they had this sort of arc of disaster.
I think that the problem is that they didn't see 1994 coming and they didn't see this coming, 2016. The difference is this time they may not want it. I think at some point there is a degree of acknowledgement of what the polls say that they have to go, it's probably going to happen. And it's going to probably be very difficult for 4 years for us because we're not going to have our butts kissed the way that we're used to.
If we pick up the Senate, which I'm pretty certain we will, and if we have a slight increase in the House, they're facing a Washington in January that is about as far away from the elite news media as you could possibly be.
By the way, I will say this. You mentioned this. One of the things that I think Trump has done brilliantly during this cycle, and I think there's probably one more cycle where legacy media gets the attention that they still somewhat get. But I think Trump, you mentioned the Joe Rogan podcast at the beginning, whether it's the Nelk Boys or Patrick Bet-David or the Sean Spicer podcast. Trump has utilized new independent media in a way that nobody else has. I think it's great for independent media. So just overall, it's great. But also he's recognized that I don't need them. I can go to places where I have a better discussion. He commented the other day, I think it was on Rogan or Patrick Bet-David, but he was like, I love long form. And I think it's a good platform for him. So I actually think that it's been brilliant how he's utilized the new media, and it's also good for the medium itself.
Well, and it contrasts perfectly with the fact that it's clear that Kamala Harris couldn't survive.
Right. Somebody keeps out, do you think she could do Joe Rogan? I just look at him and go, dude, she couldn't handle The View. If Sonny Hostin trips you up, I mean, seriously, if Sonny Hostin trips you up with what would you do different? Can you imagine being the dumb staffer that goes and asks her, would you like to do 3 hours with Joe Rogan? They're like, you're fired.
Yeah. Well, and of course, J.D. Vance promptly filled the gap. So now you're going to have the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate on the most popular podcast in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And my prediction is that J.D., who I like a great deal, will not draw as many as Trump.
I'll take that bet. I mean, yeah.
So as you're watching all this, What are you going to cue off of over the next few days?
So I'm going to look at early vote and the percentage of Republican voters that the change from 2020. That's going to be my number one thing because there's no question it's a good sign for Republicans. You look at Allegheny County, for example, Western PA, 86% of Republicans voted on election day in 2020, even during COVID. And right now, only 8% of that 80 has voted early, and we're still beating them, right? So meaning that you have a lot of runway to play with as we headed in. Biden won early vote in Pennsylvania by about 1.3 million. Republicans are just crushing it. I have a site that I go to a road to 270 on my show, and I started to go through every one of the states where early vote was. Republicans traditionally lose big early vote. They're holding their own or winning. You look at Nevada, for example, Clark County holding our own. That's Vegas, as you know, Washoe County up in the Reno area. If Republicans are doing really well and closing that gap, this is going to be a very good night. The other thing you asked me what I look at, time and money, right? Those are the two things in a campaign that are the most valuable. So where are the candidates spending their time and where are they putting their money? New Hampshire, I think, is in play. I think New Jersey is going to be close, 6-7 points in New Jersey. Working men and women are just tired of the excuses. I think culturally we've jumped the shark, right? This idea of, hey, I'm a liberal. I believe in liberal causes, but what you guys are doing on trans has gone too far. And then the economic piece, the inflation and the immigration piece. It's like, guys, people who are traditional Democrats just think their party went too far. And I think that that's going to be reflected. There are some states that I don't know that will win, but I think we're going to do a lot better in blue states than we have before.
I think there's a very real likelihood that he's going to end up winning the popular vote because he's not going to lose New York by the size of the last time. He's not going to lose New Jersey by that size. I don't even think he's going to lose California by the size he lost it in 20. Can
you imagine how the heads are going to explode? To me, last time when I've heard, well, you didn't win the popular vote, that's like, you didn't kick more field goals than the other team in football. It's like, that's not how the game's played. So why would we go campaign in Illinois if we're going to lose it? But if he wins the popular vote, they will explode.
Let me run you through the states here, the ones that we call swing states, although you start getting a New Hampshire or a Virginia.
Virginia down 2.
Well, Minnesota, he's down 3 in a poll that came out yesterday.
There's 4 tier 2s. I think New Hampshire, Virginia, New Mexico, and Minnesota. I think New Mexico and Minnesota are in kind of my bucket. Then Virginia. I think New Hampshire is the easiest to pick up, and then Virginia.
Let's run through them for a second and give us your expert opinion. Pennsylvania.
I think we pull it out. I just gave you my example of where we are in Allegheny County, but I think if you look at Lucerne, Fayette County, where Republicans have overcome the voter registration gap. Now, remember, every county in Pennsylvania has either gotten less Democrat or more Republican by registration. That's a trend, right? You look at the polls, even Dave McCormick, again, everything is inching. It may not be seismic. It's not going quick. Every time you see a poll, it's like slightly more to the right. I think Trump picks this thing up.
You had the junior senator just 2 days ago say he'd been out across Western Pennsylvania and Democrats don't get it.
No. If he wins those 19 electoral votes, but my hope is that we don't need Pennsylvania. But as I said earlier, if they don't go into election day with an 800,000 vote win, I don't see how you make it up.
Yeah, I agree. So what about Michigan?
To me, Michigan and North Carolina are the ones that I'm going to watch the closest. I feel very bullish on Michigan. I think Mike Rogers, who you know, by the way, Mike Rogers won his first election by 88 votes when he ran for the House. He used to call him landslide. I think that he's going to pull this thing out. Same thing. You look at Slotkin. She puts out an ad tying her to Trump. I'll work with Donald Trump. You don't do that if you don't think that Donald Trump's going to win. The 3 things working against Harris there, the union workers not supporting him, the non-endorsement and the electrical vehicle mandates. You've got the Arab community, and then you got young black men in the suburbs of Detroit. I think for all of those reasons, he edges out Michigan. Now, remember, he won Michigan in 2016 by 10,703 votes, which is 0.22 of a win. This is not going to be huge, but I think he ekes it out.
All right. Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, to me, is the most complicated of the states. The voter file doesn't append by registration or history, so it's a lot harder. The model suggests, and if you look at how Ron Johnson has performed and how he did in 2016, I feel very good about Wisconsin. Again, I feel like it's tied to Michigan. If we win one, we win both. If we lose one, we lose both by a hair. But I also think the same thing's going on with Eric Hovde there, who's running against Tammy Baldwin. Same thing. Look at the trajectory, and you want to be surfing that wave, heading towards the beach with enough time on election day. And they're both timing it. They're peaking at the right time. I see a scenario where he carries all three blue wall states. If he were to lose one, it's not going to be by much, though.
So turning to the South, where are you on Georgia?
Georgia, I'm the most bullish. It's hard to tell the Georgia expert about Georgia, but I like where we are in terms of voter registration. Turnout has been phenomenal, especially in the rural counties. Blacks are not turning out the way that they should. That's not good news for her. So for those reasons, I feel good about Georgia. You look at the performance of the Libertarian candidate in 2016. The Libertarian got about 120,000 votes. So they've got a third party issue in Georgia, but it's not Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, which is interesting because that's where she's been helpful to him, especially we'll get to North Carolina in a second. But that to me is the tough one because it could be our Libertarian problem there.
Well, I was going to go to North Carolina next.
Yeah, so North Carolina is interesting. In 2016, my numbers may be off here, Trump won North Carolina by 174,000 votes. Jill Stein got roughly 130,000 votes, and the margin was about 3 points. In 2020, when Jill Stein wasn't the candidate, the Green Party still had somebody on the ballot. They got just over 12,000 votes, and Trump only won by I think it's 1.3, 74,000 votes, if I'm correct. And so she's back on the ballot. That's good news for us. So anyway, I feel good. I am concerned about the effect of the hurricane on Western PA because the ability to early vote, not the desire, the ability for some of these folks to get out and vote. They're making it really easy if you live in the Democratic stranglehold of Asheville, but the rules are not there. I talked to James Blair, the political director of the Trump campaign. He said they're really pushing them to open more early voting sites. North Carolina, of all of them, is probably the most worrisome, but more for logistical reasons than anything else.
One of my closest friends lives in Black Mountain, and he said these folks are going to get there if they have to walk over glass.
I know. You remember what I was just saying. It's not desire. That when I talked to the Trump campaign, they said logistically, they're not making it easy for these guys. So I think they want to vote. I think they're pissed about the response. I think they're pissed about the policies, but they're like, suddenly it's like, oh, well, then you're going to have to drive an extra 4 hours.
Right. We had some of that playing out the other day in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, where if you wanted to vote Republican, well, you really could do it easier if you went out to the satellite location. Oh, and by the way, the satellite location didn't have any applications left.
Right. Well, I give the RNC and the Trump campaign a lot of credit this time. The lawyers are getting ahead of the problem. I think one of my biggest issues with 2020 was these guys were behind the curve when it came to addressing legal concerns, and they're now addressing them head on, and they're calling them out.
Well, as you know, Whatley is the RNC chairman from North Carolina. When I talked to him at Madison Square Garden, he's pretty bullish. He thinks that they know what they're doing.
Good. I like that. I like when people who know that state feel confident. That's why, like I said, you know Georgia better than anybody.
Tell me about Arizona.
Arizona, I was just in Thursday, Friday, I had 2 events with Trump, a rally, and then I did a thing. Those guys are fired up. When you look at the trends there, same thing. Maricopa County, Republicans were down about 6% or had about a 3% registration advantage. They've now grown that to 6%. The growth in registration in every single county in Arizona has been phenomenal. Their early vote has been great for them. I feel really good. Unfortunately, it's out west, but I would tell you, if we don't do really well in Arizona, I mean, the nice thing about the East Coast, we do well at North Carolina, New Hampshire. We look at some places and then in Northern Virginia, and not winning, but if you're doing well there, get ready for a great night. But Arizona, I feel bullish on.
I just saw a poll that came out that we may win the Senate seat.
Oh, yeah. Carrie Lee. Last poll, she was tied. Now she's up 1. Again, the thing that people have to remember when you're looking at a poll, I don't look at anything in a vacuum, but look at the trends. And the water is flowing all in one direction. And that's the thing. It's not just Trump. every Senate seat is going the right. Sam Brown in Nevada, same thing. He may come up a little short, but every Senate race, and Kari Lake is definitely in that, but it is moving the thing, moving in from left to right, everyone.
And she will change the Senate.
Yeah. I also will tell you, I'm really bullish on Eric Hovde, not just winning, but I think he's going to be a great, great addition to the Senate.
The last of these states you just mentioned is Nevada. What do you sense?
Look, I mentioned this earlier. The early vote, when John Ralston, who is a Democratic operative masquerading as an independent journalist out there, gets nervous about Republican performance in early vote, which he has, that tells you everything you need to know. The Republicans are holding their own in Clark County, in that Vegas area, and then in Washoe, and they're overperforming in the rural areas. Nevada might only have 6 electoral votes, but this could be a big, big night for Republicans. I do believe for the first time since 2004, we carry Nevada.
I have a theory, which we'll find out a lot more about on Election Day, that she can't pull them out. If you look around, the Democratic drop-off is even more impressive than the Republican increase.
Yeah, Trump's played these policy pronouncements beautiful. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on American-bought cars, home health care deduction. These are things that actually impact people's lives. And if you're a casino worker or a server, you're like, hey, this will make my life better. And she's sitting there talking about these existential policy pronunciations. Trump speaks directly to them. I was so worried about Nevada. Robert Cahaly from Trafalgar had said to me, Sean, this is like probably a month ago. I said, it looks really good out there. He said, it's like Lucy in the football. He said, we always think we're doing well, but now the numbers are coming in with early vote, and I feel like we're going to do it this time.
Yep, I think that's probably true. Now, one last thing, which is I'm a little concerned about the number of states that are already announcing that they're not going to count on election night.
We were just talking about Nevada, right? They literally fought to allow ballots to come in up to 3 days late that are not postmarked. How do you go to a judge and say, hey, we want them to come in 3 days late? Okay, I can see a case that says, hey, sometimes mail can be slow. Some of these people in rural counties, then that's why you plan ahead. But, okay, fair enough. But then to say, and we don't want them to have a postmark, what does that tell you? That it's like, let's see how it goes, and then we'll get enough.
I have actually personally been through that in Georgia. It's inspirational. Listen, I'm looking forward to joining you on the two-way shows in the morning, and I'm looking forward to election night and comparing notes. I can't wrap this up without talking about your podcast, The Sean Spicer Show, and your new starring role as a co-host in Two Ways, The Morning Meeting, which you co-host with journalist Mark Halperin and Democratic strategist Dan Turrentine. You all host this morning meeting on Two Way every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I also want to mention your new book, Radical Nation. People can find you by going to SeanSpicer.com. You're a very smart observer of the totality of the scene, much more than just politics. I really appreciate you coming and spending time.
Anything for you, Mr. Speaker. You know that. I wouldn't be where I am in politics without you, the tapes, Joe Gaylord and his books. And you know this. I have almost all of the GoPack tapes. So you got an army of us into politics. And so good or bad, either take credit for it or don't.
Thank you for doing this.
You bet, sir.
Thank you to my guest, Sean Spicer. You can get a link to buy his new book, Radical Nation, on our show page at newtsworld.com. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcast and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Right now, listeners of Newt's World can sign up for my 3 free weekly columns at Gingrich360.com/newsletter. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.